Good afternoon. Hey, my name is Chuck. I am one of the worship leaders here at Kensington. I want to welcome you to the first Sunday of 2020. Let's stand if we could. Let's all stand together. Let's sing some songs to God this morning, all right? Let's start 2020 off right. Heaven thundered and the world was born. Life begins and ends in the dust you fall. Faith commanded and the mountains move. Fear is losing ground to our hope in you. All right, here we go, come on. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Freedom conquered, all the chains undone. Sin defeated, Jesus is overcome. Mercy triumphed when the third day dawned. Darkness was denied when the stone was gone. Come on! Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. All right, let's get those hands together this morning. Sing these next words together. One church, kicking off 2020. This is our anthem. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Come on! Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Here we go. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done.
The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. And when the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I know and how to triumph. Oh, my God will never fail. Oh, my God will never fail. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. Every war he wages, he will win. And I'm not backing down from any giant, 'cause I know how this story ends. Yeah. Yes, I know how this story ends. Come on, you say, I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Come on, sing. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. Oh, you turn it for good. Yeah. You take what the enemy meant for evil, oh, and you turn it for good. Oh, you turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. Oh, you turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. Oh, you turn it for good. So you take what the enemy meant for evil, yeah, and you turn it for good. Oh, you turn it for good. Oh, you take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. Oh, you turn it for good. I'm gonna see a victory, and we're gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Yes, I'm gonna see a victory. Oh, we're gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. We're gonna see a victory. We're gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Come on, just you sing. Oh, the oh, it chases and it fights still. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, breathless love of God. Yeah, yeah. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Come on, we sing it. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Yeah, come on. There's no wall. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Come on, declare it. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow, there's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No, there's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No, 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 no. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases and it fights till I'm found. Oh, and I can earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away.
but it is afternoon, and we are so glad you're with us. Happy 2020, everybody. Happy New Year. Right? Yes, Happy New Year. You guys can go ahead and have a seat. We're going to give you a little info before we continue with our day. But hey, my name's Kim, and I am part of the Orion campus team around this place. And we're so glad that you're with us and that you're intentionally taking this time to kick off your new year in this way. So welcome. And we want to start with some celebrations. So I don't know how many of you were with us, but I pray you were. We want to celebrate Christmas services. So who was here hanging out with us for Christmas? Yes, right? We had an awesome couple days here at Orion, but we want to celebrate for all of Kensington. We had 43 Christmas services, right? That impacted over 40,000 people that walked in our doors. Isn't that amazing? I love hearing what Christ is doing, not just in this place, but in Kensington as a whole. And really what we want to celebrate is that people came in the doors all across the area and to see the impact that Christ is having. And the perfect timing is what we talked about at Christmas, what his perfect timing coming into our lives, our world, just for us at that time and what it has done. So we're so glad you were here. And maybe for some of you, that was your first time in our doors. Special welcome to all of you. And I hope you're back with us again today. And maybe you were with us last week as well. We have a couple things that we want to make you aware of. First would be an awesome place in the lobby. It's called The Hub. It's right inside these south main doors over here. And really that is one-stop shopping for all things Kensington. So if you are new or if you haven't really connected into anything here yet, we would love to meet you, have you fill out some information and tell you a little bit more about this place. We have a fun little gift for you and we'd love to walk you around and show you more of Kensington. And also another awesome thing, and this is for everybody, we are doing a Winterfest Carnival next weekend. So January 11th. I think last service I told everybody it was in July. So it is not in July. It is in January. January 11th, and it's from 11 to 1 right here at the campus. And if you're brand new, we want to meet you. So come and be with us. If you've been here for a while, come and be with us. If you've been here since we started 30 years ago, still come and be with us. Just a time for community, play some games, have a little bit of food, but we do need an RSVP. So it's kensingtonchurch.org/winterfest. Let us know who's coming so we can make sure that we can feed all y'all. And as always, Kensington always has a ton of stuff going on. Moving a little bit further down in January, we have what's called our Move Out Gathering that's going to be happening at the Troy campus. This is just an awesome weekend of impact. We have speakers come in, everything from leadership and vision, so much fun. So it's a Friday night and a Saturday morning, and I love the theme for this year. It's called Crafted for Kingdom Impact, which is so cool because if any of you craft, I'm just saying, it takes time. It takes intentionality. There's some love that goes into that crafting of that thing that you're making. And we believe here at Kensington that each of us has been crafted specifically with a purpose by Christ to make an impact in this world. So that's what this weekend is going to be all about. And if in any way that stirs something in your heart and you're wondering if that might be for you that weekend, that means it's for you. So come and be with us. You can jump online, kensingtonchurch.org/moveoutgathering, and come and be with us because it's going to be an awesome event. So hey, we want to continue the celebration of New Year's. So stand up, say hi to somebody, and we're wondering though, do you think it was Tom Brady's last game last night? We're not sure. We're not sure. Anyway, glad you guys are here. Happy New Year.
All right, so how many of you were watching football yesterday? That's what we do. Anybody gonna watch it today? There's people that didn't come to this service right now because they want to be there at the beginning of this thing. Now, let me ask you what Kim just said. Was it Tom Brady's last game? I don't think so. You guys want to hear a rumor? He's coming to Detroit. No, I don't know anything. I'm just dreaming and wishing. Wouldn't that be Yeah, it wouldn't matter. He comes here, you got to have people around him. Anyway, let's not talk football anymore. Let's talk sermon from the streets, sermon from the seats. So this series, I'm really excited about it because it's 4 weeks of stories from people that have sitting right where you are. These are people that have been at Kensington, or maybe like the one today, that Scott Newport has been at Kensington 20 years, and I've known him and didn't know all the details of his story, but it's a powerful story. In fact, you're going to hear mountaintop experiences and valley experiences. Today's more about pain. Today's a struggle that they went through in their life and lessons that we can learn from Scott's story and his wife and their child. But before we get there, I'll just say this, and you know this: pain, trials, adversity, hardship, whatever you want to call it, is a part of life. Am I right? I mean, I've always said, this is really encouraging to say it again, but I've said this since year one here. Here's 3 categories when it comes to pain. You're either not in pain right now, but you're headed into it. You may know it, you may not know it. Or you're actually in pain right now. You're in a struggle right now. Or you're just coming out of one and you're headed into a different one later. Isn't that encouraging? That's just great news, right? It's like, no, we don't want to hear that. In fact, I'm experiencing a little pain right now. My wife, Ann, is down in Ohio taking care of her parents. I'll tell you why later. So she's been gone since Friday morning. And at the same time, my oldest son, CJ, and his wife, who just got a brand new puppy, who's not housebroken, decided they're taking a vacation to Mexico, and we're watching their puppy, actually their older dog and their puppy. So we got Apollo and Boomer, and my wife is the dog trainer. She can housebreak a dog in like 2 or 3 days, but she's gone. So I'm alone in my empty nest house watching football yesterday with these 2 dogs. Here's a picture I took of them yesterday. That's Boomer and that's Apollo, and they're the cutest little things in the world. And notice where I took this picture. Outside, because that's where this dog needs to be, because he's not housebroken, so he poops and pees everywhere. Okay? Is it okay to say that? Everywhere at all times. I'm trying to train him. In fact, I'm walking around. I still got all the treats in my pocket. These are little doggy treats. Anybody want one? Come. There you go. You can have one. And he's learning come, but he has not learned poop and pee. And in fact, I shared last service. It's probably too much information. But when he poops, he eats it immediately. So, and then he comes over and wants to lick your face. So it's the cutest thing in the world. And Cody came over yesterday with Bryce, and I'm like, you don't want Bryce anywhere near that baby? He's like, get me out of here. Anyway, so that's been my last couple days, which is a little bit of pain. I'm in it right now, and I got to go home to it this afternoon. And I want to watch football, but it's 24/7 with this little guy, and so I watch most of it through the window on my back deck. Anyway, now here's the thing. That's really not pain. It's pain a little bit. It's like tiny. When we're talking pain, we're talking pain. Some of you know this, but we have a slogan that we remind ourselves backstage. And we reminded ourselves this morning before rehearsal, and the slogan is this: never underestimate the pain in this room. Because it's easy to forget sometimes that people walking in right now, there's real pain in here. And I'm not kidding. Some of you are in it right now. Some of you are not in it right now. Some of you just came out of it. It's all true. We live in a broken world, and there's going to be pain as a part of every one of our lives, a good part of our lives. We love to come to church and pretend that God never allows pain in the world, but he actually does allow pain in the world. The world's a broken, sin-stained place. And I don't have time to get into the theology of how a good and loving, powerful God could allow evil and pain, but he does. And he meets us in that, and we're going to talk about that today, but pain is real. And my little dog story is just a laughable thing, but the pain some of you are in is immense, and I understand that. It is real, and I know that pain, and I've been there, and I'll be there again. It's not something to minimize. In fact, it's really, really strong. In fact, I wrote in my notes just yesterday, I wrote this: have you ever found yourself in the middle of pain in your life that is so severe, so unrelenting? Think of that word. It just doesn't stop. So unrelenting that you've truly lost hope. Ever been there? I've been there. Some of you are there right now. You're hoping 2020 could be the year you get hope back. Some of you are so excited about 2020 because you're like, 2019 was a bad year, and I just want a new year. And some of you have a lot of hope, a lot of us in this room, and it's really interesting. At church, we often want to come here and pretend we're not in pain, but you are. And we are. And it's a big deal right where you're sitting. So I wrote this, where do you turn? Here's a question, where is God when I've hit rock bottom? You ever asked that? I've asked that. You lost your job. You got a phone call at 3 a.m., which is never good. Your marriage is just blown up. Or your child makes a horrible decision, or you're going through a health crisis, or you had a miscarriage. Or maybe 3 miscarriages like my son and daughter-in-law had. Your child is born with a terminal disease. A loved one dies. Or maybe multiple things of that have happened all in the same month. You know, the reason Ann isn't with me the last couple days is we were down to see her mom and dad. They're 90 years old, and her mom's had dementia for 14 years, and she doesn't know who Ann is or I am anymore. And they're in assisted living now in Columbus, Ohio. Why Columbus? Because Ann's older brother, Jim, who was my high school baseball coach, and her brother was my center. I was a quarterback. So I've been close to that family. So Jim lives in Columbus, so he sort of took them from Georgia to Columbus, and they're in assisted living about 2 miles from his house. And so we saw him at Christmas, and her dad was doing pretty good, even though he has 2 rods in his femurs from cancer that he had surgery on a couple years ago. He has a walker, and yet when we left and came back like 2 days later, they said he fell. We got a picture of him laying on the assisted living floor, and they rushed him to ER and found out he's double pneumonia because his heart's failing, and he can't pump the fluid out, and blah, 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 blah. Not sure how long he's going to live. Meanwhile, her mom is in hospice, and when we were there, she has no idea. It's just like a body without a soul. It's just like she's gone. And so they needed help. And so Ann rushed down there Thursday night, and she's been there 24/7. She says, I spent all day with Dick at the hospital while Jim is with her mom, and then they switch. And Ann says, I go lay on the bed with mom and hold her hand, and I pray, God, take her. Please just take her. And so that's the reality that we're living in. And I know what you're thinking, because I'm thinking the same thing. It's bad, but it's not that bad. They're 90 years old. It's time, and I agree. And some of you are like, mine's a lot worse than that. I get it. But the question is, what do you do with your pain? And where is God in pain? Whatever level it is, little, huge, that is a question every one of us has to wrestle with probably every day of our lives. Am I right? It's real. And I tell you, we don't do well as Americans with pain. Just being honest. Most of us in this room aren't wondering if we're going to eat tonight, or if we're going to have a drink of water, or a bottle of water this week. And many of you have gone on mission trips with us here, and I've been places where they don't know if they'll get water this week. And so we live in the most blessed country, and we have a little bit of pain, and we freak out. It's like, what is this? I can't believe in a God who would allow this. And it's really nothing, but it's real, right? And so here's the question we want to dive into and hopefully help you answer. And I think Scott Newport's going to give us a really good perspective on, okay, when it's really bad and you lost all hope, how do you deal, and where is God? And so we're going to show you a video. It's about 10 minutes of just Scott talking about his life. And you'll see truths and lessons coming out of that. And then I'm just going to come up and teach out of that. And here's what I'll say. As you watch the video, I just want you to know our usher's going to come, and we're going to take our offering at this point. And as I said on Christmas, and I mean this, and Kim just said, you're really our guest if you're brand new. You don't have to give. Keep your wallet in your pocket. You're our guest. If you want to give, we're certainly not going to stop you. But this is a time for you to be our guest and just let God speak to you. Others of us have said, I'm giving, and I'm giving this way. And we give generously, and we do it digitally because it's safe. And I gave a year-end gift, and many of you did. Thank you for that. And it's something we do because we worship God, not just through singing, but also through the way we live and how we handle our money. So thank you for giving. It was just a fantastic year-end. Thank you for being here. But right now, I'd like you to worship God through giving, but also just say, okay, God, what do you want to say to me? And he's going to speak through Scott's story. Watch this.
Thinking back now, I can remember the first piece of furniture I made, right? I mean, I'm a carpenter, right? So I build houses, do roofing, siding, but I never really built any furniture. This one came from a barn that was built 120 years ago, and the guy called me up and says, hey, I'm down here, my grandson got a piece, but I just want you to know the family, we had to take this old barn down, but the family members have taken all the good pieces. And right away I'm going, baby, that's what I want, right? I want the stuff nobody wants, because I think I can take something that has little value to other people and make something beautiful. It wasn't till a couple days before his birth that we knew there was something really wrong with him. They asked my wife to come in. They asked me to come in kind of urgently, and they said, you have to go to a meeting. We're gonna have a meeting at the hospital right now. And the one neonatologist said to us, just want you to know there's a 50-50 chance of survival today, right? The only thing I could think about was, I want at least a picture of my kid before he dies, right? So he was born, we got a picture of him. As soon as he came out through C-section, you just heard this little whimper, right? My wife goes, I want to see him. And they said, okay, well, we'll bring him over, but he's really sick. And we were able to see him, got the picture, and that was the start of our journey. And they'd never really given us a clear diagnosis. And they said, hey, we really think you should go to C.S. Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor because Evan might die tomorrow. He may live a lifetime. We don't know, right? Months went by. Found out he had Noonan syndrome, but he had a really terrible heart condition that's sometimes associated with that called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. There's no cure for that, and it only progressively gets worse. And now we can't get him off the ventilator, so we had to have a trach done, and he was on a little ventilator, and if my wife's goal was that he would die at home. So now the race was just to get Evan well enough where we knew how to run a ventilator, do a feeding tube, run med pumps, that we could go home and Evan could die there. And the prognosis at that time, they said, children usually like Evan don't live past 2 years. And now we're coming up to a year in the hospital. So you can imagine, my wife at one time didn't go home for 4 or 5 months. So we finally got Evan home, had the nurses living with us. I remember when he first walked, not till he was 3 years old, we just kept going on. 3 years, 4 years. And Evan was 7 years old. It was a day after Thanksgiving, and we had no nurse that day. I was on my computer and I heard all the alarms go off. I'm close enough, so I run into his room and he's up there sitting like he's awake and he's playing. So by him moving around, he sets the alarms off. So silence reset, push that old favorite button, stop that alarm, and he took my hand. And so I'm out of the crib, he takes my hand because he couldn't talk and he could do just 2 signs, more and please, right? Which looked like that. That was his sentence. And he took my hand and he threw it towards the doorway of his room, which meant like he wanted me to leave. So I go outside the room, I get back on my computer, and the alarms go off again. I'm like, man, you always go running and up there, and this time he's playing again. Now he's got like a Christmas bulb still in a cardboard box, right? He'd push it and play Christmas carols, and he's looking, and the lights are going on in the room, like, oh my gosh. So he pushes me out of the room again. So that happens 3, 4, 5 times, right? And the 6th time, the alarms are going again. And so this time I'm run back to the room, and this time I can hear my wife coming down the stairs, and she runs into the room, and I'm looking in the crib, and immediately I knew, that he was gone. And my wife, and I think he just died, right? And because he was so sick, we would never call 911 because when you have pediatrics, children, they don't know what to do. And we were already warned, like, you'll know when the time has come. And a couple months before that, I'd gotten up in the morning and my wife was already up and she was talking to the nurse and they were talking about hopes and dreams for Evan. And she said that Evan would be at his best when he dies. How horrific that a mom has to say that, but that was true. That's where we were at as a family. And my dream as a dad was that I would be there when he died. Well, that day was the day, right? Evan did die at his best, right? Listening to Christmas music, right? Shining the light on the wall. And I was there, right? Within seconds before he died, right? I think the first time I realized I had like this desire to help families, Evan was maybe a month or 2 old, and we'd seen a lot of sick babies and families suffering, and we were suffering and crying and not knowing what was going to happen. And I remember there was a family we had kind of connected with, and they had twins, and one of the twins was sicker than the other twin. And one day that other baby died. And when that happened, I had so much empathy for that family. and not even really thinking about my own family in that moment. Then when I finally saw the mom kind of come out of the room, right? I didn't even go say anything to her, but I got up and I just kind of maybe nodded. I don't remember really what it was. But I thought, like, somebody's got to do something, man. I mean, we can't all hide from this, right? Because we were here together, and you become connected with these families. But it was like really uncomfortable to see how people just couldn't go there, right? And so I started like doing that, starting connecting with families. People look at me and they say, like, well, where'd you do your training? Are you a counselor? How's this work? Like, how do you do this? And I always say, like, I go, man, look at my hands, right? I'm just a carpenter. Because, like, when I go to the hospital and I help families who are suffering, whose children are dying, or maybe I'm sitting there and they're dying with them, it's not like I get out my Bible and say, hey, we need to really look at this scripture. Sometimes that happens. But most times it's just loving people. So I started to make these toolboxes. And so when I go see families now at the hospital, everybody knows me. There's Scott with the toolbox. But when I take it in and I meet new families, I tell families, hey, my name's Scott. I'm a parent too. I usually don't tell them my story. And I will say to them, I know this is new to you, right? You're kind of like an apprentice, right? This is like no one in high school taught you how to take care of a kid with Down syndrome or trisomy 18. So today I brought you this apprentice box because I want you to become an expert of your child's care. And it's kind of a metaphor, and I want you to know, to become an expert of your child's care, everybody here at the hospital has a tool for you. I noticed you like Dr. Anderson, and he gave you a diagnosis, and he's really been helpful. And you always think you need to see Dr. Anderson, but really, you've got Nurse Betty in here, right, today. And I know she was actually helping you, right? She was teaching you how to do the feeds and how to run the medication. And so you need to start collecting these tools to become an expert. And maybe even I can help you. I made the handle here out of oak because I always think oak is strength, man, like the oak tree, the strength. And I'm not sure what your family strength is. Maybe you don't even know. I see you have a Bible over there. Maybe that's your family strength. And you had a lot of people up here yesterday. Maybe that's your family strength. But you're going to need something to hold on to as you go on your journey. As we all know, that wedges can come into our lives, can't they? And sometimes even childhood illness can be a wedge in families' life. I've seen families here that have struggled, their marriages, their families, because the illness separated things. But if you look real closely here, I don't know if you can see it, I put a wedge in the end of that joint because that actually strengthens the connection, right? So as you go on your journey here with your child, start collecting your tools. Find out what your family strength is, something to hold on to. And just realize that all wedges don't need to separate. I think back to when we had gotten the diagnosis that Evan wouldn't live a long life and that he may die in the hospital. He couldn't sit up, he couldn't hardly move, but he used to put up his finger sometimes, right? And I don't know, he didn't know what he was doing probably. And I remember thinking when he did that all the time, Dad, the one thing, man, the one thing, right? Maybe he's trying to tell me the one thing. And immediately, it didn't take me any time at all to know what the answer was, and that's people matter. And so it was more of an affirmation for me that Evan's life did matter, and that the one thing that he taught me is that everybody matters.
You know, when I first watched it this week, just as you just watched it, I was sort of struck, I don't know if you were, just with Scott's contentment, almost a peace in the middle of this horrific trial that, think about this. I don't know if there's anything worse than losing a child as a parent. I mean, there's different levels of pain. That's got to be one of the highest. Your children hopefully outlive you, but when they go, it's one of the hardest. And there's pain like that in this room. A few months ago, I officiated, a funeral that many of you were at of a grandchild that drowned, of one of our dearest wonderful servants here at this place. And it's just real. It's just, it's interesting. I watched this video, I don't know, Thursday, Friday. I guess it was Friday morning. And right after that, I'm like, I need a break. And so, again, Ann's gone. And, the funny thing is, Thursday night, right as I found out she was going to go down to Ohio for a couple days, I was over at a buddy's. He's got an indoor golf simulator. And so it was really fun. We're hitting. And I got home about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I walk in, and Ann's got all the Christmas bins out, which means we're packing up Christmas. And I'm like, what are you doing? We're not packing up Christmas. It's 10 p.m. She goes, I got to go to Ohio tomorrow morning. We got to do it now. I'm like, right now? She's like, yeah. I'm like, it's going to take 3 hours. You guys like us? We have 18 bins now. I don't know if it's 18, but it feels like 1,000 bins. Everything in the house is covered with, something. So we're packing this up and taking the Christmas tree down. So 1 a.m., and then we put it all in the garage, and she says, you got to do this. I got to go to Ohio. That's a two-person job to get it up the ladder into the attic in the garage. I'm still convinced. I don't know why our attic hasn't fallen into our garage because we got so much stuff up there. So Friday after I watched that video, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I'm loading this stuff up into our garage, and really interesting. I don't know the last time I saw this. It has to be decades. I'm putting things away, and I'm up in the attic, and I look down, and laying on the attic floor is a copy of my brother's obituary that I took a picture of. It was laying there. I hadn't seen this in decades. And many of you have heard my story after my mom and dad's divorce. My little brother, Craig, died of leukemia in 1964, October 29th. I was 7. He was 5. And I know what that feels like as a brother, and I watched what it feels like with my parents, especially my mom, because she was the one that took me. And every October, that memory for decades, it doesn't go away. That is a pain that is immense. And whatever the pain is in your life, whether it's something like that or something different, the question that we need to look at is, okay, how do you deal with this? And I was taken back to something I said year one. I know most of you weren't here year one. We were at Troy High School. We were 43 people trying to start a little church and see if God would do something, and it's remarkable what he's done. But in year one, I was studying, actually it was in seminary, I was studying the book of James. It's a little book written by the half-brother of Jesus in the New Testament. It's a very powerful book because it's so much about application. If you know me at all, you know I'm a guy that's like, I don't want to just talk about theology. I want to talk about how do you live this stuff? The book of James is your book, man. You want to know how to live? That's your book. Read it. And so I remember preaching a sermon back in the first year at Kensington that I've never forgotten the big idea, the theme, and I'm going to say it again. And many of you, I think you've heard it because I've probably said it once a year for 30 years. Let's see if anybody can finish this sentence. But it was about pain or about trials or about adversity, about hardship, whatever you want to call it. You can put in any word you want. You can put wedges in there if you want. But I said it this way: trials will make you blank or blank. And you know me, it's either going to rhyme or it's going to be an alliteration that hopefully you won't forget. So I made it with B's, and I'm hoping you don't forget. But trials can make you what? Better or bitter? Yeah, some of you remember that. It's simple, right? And I don't know if that's original with me, but I'm going to claim it, okay? Probably got it somewhere, but there was no internet back there, so you couldn't steal stuff. But anyway, trials or pain or wedges or adversity or hardship, whatever, storms in your life, they will do one of two things. You'll get through it and you're better, or you'll go through it and you're bitter. I don't know if any of you remember, but I added a phrase to that. Trials make you better or bitter. The choice is yours. It's up to you and me how we negotiate through a trial, how we negotiate through pain. And if we do it, and I'm not saying it's easy, but if we do it in a way that's the way God wants us to, we actually come out the other side better. And again, the other side may be in a week, it could be 10 years. I don't know. You never know how long this trial is going to be. But if you, this can happen even in that trial, but you can become better or bitter. Now, here's the thing. Let me ask you this. How many of you know some bitter people because of a trial they went through? Yeah, you don't have to raise hands. I'm guessing most of us know some people that went through something, and I'm telling you, it was really bad and hard. And yet, today, there's an angst in their soul. You can smell the bitterness in their life. They're just hard. Many of them walked away from church. They walked away from God. They walked away from their faith. A lot of them walked away from their marriage. You know that 75% of couples who have a child with a terminal illness get divorced? I think it's up to 80% now. They can't do it, and they just walk away, and it blows their whole. That's people have gone through something and they're bitter. Now let me ask you this. Do you know anybody that's gone through something and they're better? I'm hoping there's a few heads going, yeah, but here's what I know. I've lived long enough to know this. The number of people that come out better compared to bitter is very low. This is a low number. This is a high number. Most people go through something really hard and they flip God the bird. They said, I'm done with this and I'm out of here. And they become bitter people. And the people that go through it are better. They've learned something I want to teach you today. Because when I taught that sermon 30 years ago, it came from one passage in the book of James, first chapter, second verse. James write this, and this is for you and I. Take a picture of this if you've never read this verse. Memorize this if you want to make it your verse for 2020. And it's basically this. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. Now, I highlighted a couple words there that I want to just teach real quick. But first of all, he says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials. Here's the thing. Do you think these people are going through trials? Here's why when you read the Bible, you need to do backstory. You need to go, what is this about? Who's he writing to? Here in verse 1, he says, to the tribes who are dispersed. And you go, what do you mean dispersed? They're scattered. They were all together. Now they've had to be scattered all over Asia Minor. Why? Anybody know? For their faith. And it wasn't like, okay, you believe in Jesus, we're going to persecute you. Like persecution in our world is people rip you on Twitter. That's not very tough. I mean, we get all upset about it, but people rip you for being a Christian on Twitter. In that world, if you were a Christ follower, guess what they did? Anybody want to guess? They killed you. You were martyred for your faith. And the only way you could live is you had to leave the city, leave the country. So their 12 tribes have been dispersed. So he says to the 12 tribes that are dispersed all over Asia Minor, he says, consider it pure joy. So they're running for their lives because if they stay there, they will be killed if they don't deny Christ. So they're spread out, and he says this. Now think about this. Your life's on the line, and you get this letter from this dude who says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters. You're like, dude, wait, what? Now here's what's wrong. We think pure joy is a word that's like happy, right? That's not what the word means. That's why when you study the Bible, you go into the original language, like, what does it mean in Koine Greek, pure joy? It doesn't mean happy. See, we grew up in church, and I don't know if you're like me, you ever sing this song in church? I got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Where? Down in, come on, you want to sing it with me? Down in my heart. It's a great kid song, and we think that's what joy is it's this fake happy stuff. No, what he's talking about here, pure joy, when you look at it, it's like it's this rich, sort of deep-seated contentment that you don't get from circumstances making you happy. It's despite your circumstances, a contentment, a peace, a victory, a power that's almost unexplainable. That's all in one word, pure joy. Let me ask you something. Did you sense that in Scott? Yes. Where's that come from? I know. Same place James says it comes from. It comes from knowing something. Here's what he says. Consider it my pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever, by the way, he doesn't say if you face, whenever, it's going to happen. It's either yesterday or tomorrow, it's going to happen. Whenever you face trials of many kinds. I love the word for many kinds. It's the word polkados. That's in the Greek. It sound like anything in English? Polka dots. Polka dots. What are polka dots? They're big ones, they're little ones, they're medium ones. He's saying you're going to have trials. Some of them are going to be really big and overwhelming. Some of them are going to be flat tires or dogs pooping in your family room, right? That's a little tiny little polka dot, but there's others going to be a child's going to die, or you're going to get a cancer diagnosis, or your husband's going to walk out, right? He says when you face trials of many kinds, there's going to be all kinds. Now, here's the key. He says because, and this is where you should lean in and go, because what? Because what? He says, you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Now, what's he saying? You. Who's he writing to? He says in the beginning, brothers and sisters. What's that mean? Christ followers. They're in the family of God. So he says, you who are brothers and sisters know something that people that aren't in the family of God don't know. What is it we know? Basically this. God's still here. God's in the middle of this pain. God's in that valley with you. God's in that hospital room with you. God's in that courtroom with you. God's right there. I know you don't see him. You may think he's not there. You may not believe he's right there. He didn't go anything. That's what you know. And because you know that, you can understand this is a test of my faith. Faith gets tested all the time. In the hardest times is in the darkest times. That produces perseverance. See, when you know something, it changes how you respond. I was riding my pedal bike years ago on Walton Avenue, just on the side of the road, and this car whipped by me really fast and literally bumped my bike, and I bumped into the grass, and my first response was, dude, right? And I turned and looked, and as I looked, this car was whizzing by me. In the back seat, I saw a woman doing CPR to a guy, and they were headed to Crittenton. Now, here's the thing. When they bumped me, I was like, what the? And then when I saw this, I'm like, oh, and I prayed for him. Because I knew something that I didn't know a second before. It's like, what? Now I have a knowledge. It's like, oh, they're on their way to the hospital. They're in an emergency. I'm going to pray for them. This is what he's saying. Because you know something that people that don't believe in God don't know. That this is a test of your faith produces perseverance. And he says, you want to know what perseverance looks like? Look at this. Next verse. He says this, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Now, here's the thing. Anybody here want to be mature and complete? Isn't that like the goal of life? I'd like to be a mature man, a mature woman of God. Here's what he's saying. Do you understand this? Now, don't miss this. He's saying the only way you get to maturity and completeness in Christ is how? Through pain. Now, here's what we say. I'm out. I want maturity and completeness, but I don't want any pain. He says, well, then you can't get there. The most mature and complete and highest character people are usually the people that have gone through the hardest stuff. That's why I always say, victories don't bring maturity. Losses do. I always say the Lions are the most character team in the NFL. They lose continually. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. Prosperity doesn't ever really build character. Adversity does, yet we don't want it. But he says, if you know something, as hard as it is, as dark as that valley gets, I'm right there. But I got to tell you, you don't always sense it or believe it. Some of you are sitting right now and going, you're telling me God's with me. I don't believe he's with me. And I'm telling you, I didn't either, but he is. About 15 years ago, I was sitting with Luther Ellis, one of the Detroit Lions players, when I was the Lions chaplain at lunch. And we get a call, Ann and I. Ann actually got the call from her sister, Barb, Barb was her best friend, older sister. Barb led Ann to Christ. Barb had 4 sons. We had 3 sons. Every day they talked. They're just soulmates. And Barb calls and says, just saw the doctor. I don't know why I had to go see him, but something's wrong. And he said, I'm going to die in 9 months. We're like, what? He says, I have lung cancer and there's no cure. So we get this call and we start this journey. Many of you are around Kensington those days. And the short story is she died in less than 9 months. 44 years old, leaving her 4 sons and her husband. Never smoked a day in her life. Unbelievable follower of God. We went to every faith healer you could. We had everybody pray over her. We asked God to heal her. We went to doctors. We did everything. She did everything. Ann spent days down there, held her hand the day she took her last breath. And God healed her. Not the way we thought. Her healing is she met Jesus at 44 years of age. And I tell you, we would sit in church where you're sitting during that window, and it was really hard. I can remember, think about this, we would go to our Troy midweek at the time. It was the only time we had a midweek service where we sang more worship songs like we did this morning. And I remember as worship would start, singing worship, because worship isn't just singing, it's how we live, but often it's singing as well. We would literally cry. Ann, I think, cried for a year during worship. There's something intimate about worship that's hard to explain. When you go vertical, it's hard to explain. I remember we'd be standing there, and I remember looking over, and Ann would just be like this. She'd just be weeping, and you think she's not worshiping, but she's worshiping God with a fervor that you can't even explain. There were no words, there was no hands raised. It was the most intimate thing ever. And I tell you, you know your faith is real when you're in those moments. And I know sometimes when we worship here, we're going to end with a song. Some of you can't even sing. You have nothing in you to sing. And sometimes you just listen. You say, God, I please, I want to believe you're with me, and he is. I'm telling you, he is. And we've walked that valley, and we'll have to walk it again. I'm sure that he's there. And that's something you have to know here, but you also have to experience it in that moment. And one of the best things you can do in those moments is you need somebody beside you to walk with you. And I'm telling you, that's what the church is. It's not a building, it's people. And if you're new here and you don't know anybody, I'm telling you, do what we ask you to do. Go out to that lobby, jump in some kind of connection group. You'll find somebody and they'll journey with you. I'm telling you, you can't do it alone. And it's really interesting. A couple years ago, I shared this, but it really was life-changing for me, is I went through some Live training. We have Live training. You can sign up for it, Live. And I went through it with Dave Gibbons. And he took a group of us through a thing about pain that I've never forgotten. And here's how simple it was. And we saw it in Scott's story, by the way. Here's the big idea. Your pain will point you to your purpose. Your pain will point you to your purpose. Now, how's that happen? This is a diagram that was in the workbook. It's literally me taking a picture of it, so it's not high quality. But here's a little sort of sequence that we often go through. At the bottom, you see, it starts at the bottom where you see pain, it's all wrapped up. Here's what most of us do with pain. We cover it. We hide it. We don't want to tell anybody about our struggle or our addiction or our temptation or something that's happened to us or something we're going through right now. Here's what we do. We hide it and cover it up. And by the way, guess where we do this the most? Here at church. Hopefully not at this church, but it happens at church. Why? Because we get in this, I don't know what happens. You're struggling, you're yelling at your wife, you're yelling at your kids all the way as you're driving here. Life's not good. You turn into that parking lot and you go, hey, I love Jesus. Little butterflies coming out of your car. And you walk up here and we put on the mask and we pretend everything's okay. Here's why we do that. Because we think everybody sitting around you is fine. Their marriages are better than yours. Their life's better than yours. And you don't know. There's pain everywhere in this room. And people are struggling. So we put on this mask at church. This is the last place we should hide. This should be the place we take the mask off. I hope this will be a church. I wanted to put a sign out there. I got vetoed, but I wanted to put a sign by the front door that says, mask removed here. Drop your mask here. Let's be honest and real, because we covered up. But here's what Dave said. He said, no, don't cover it up. Here's how you get victory in your pain. You take the step to confess it. There's a microphone there. It doesn't mean you stand up on stage and confess it. It just means you tell somebody the truth. That's what confession is. You don't hide anymore. You take the darkness away from that. You bring it into the light. And the second you bring your struggle, your pain into the light, I've said this many times here, and it's really true, and I've experienced it myself. The second you bring it into the light, you start the healing process. The second it's out. I remember year one when my wife stood on this stage, not here, but at Troy High School, and said to our congregation, and I'm not saying you should do this, but she was a leader, so she said it public to our congregation. She said, I was sexually abused as a young girl. And I remember sitting there thinking, that just changed Kensington Church. We're going to be that kind of church. Yep, we are. Yes, we are. 30 years later, it's like, this is a place it's okay to say, here's my pain. And so when you confess it, it leads to embracing it. Now, embrace doesn't mean, I just love this. It means this is a part of my story. It doesn't define who I am, but it is a part of who I am. And so I'm not going to cover it up. I'm actually going to embrace it. And here's the beauty of this. Look at this. That points you to, that's a guide there. I don't know if you can read that. But the guide points you to your gift to the world. See, here's what's amazing. The pain you've gone through, God wants to heal you in it so that then you can be a healer to others that go through the same pain. I don't know if you know this, but this is actually in the New Testament. I love this verse where Paul wrote this in 2 Corinthians 1. He says, praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort. He's the God of all comfort, even though we don't always believe that. He's the God of all comfort. It says this, who comforts us in all of our troubles. And sometimes we don't know that, but he does. He comforts us in all of our troubles. Look at this. So that, that's a purpose clause, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. So what's he saying? This is exactly what happened in Scott's life. Is God met Scott and his wife as their son was dying and comforted them, and then he said, now go. People matter. Go. And Scott ends up, you know what he does now? He goes to the hospital. People think he's a counselor. He's not a counselor. He's just a dad who lost his son that knows that journey. So he walks in the hospital with his little Tukut, comes along families, and they love this guy, and the family is like, who are you? I need you so much. That's his purpose in life. It came out of his pain. I wrote it down this way in my notes. When you allow God to transform your pain into your purpose, he will point you to your people. I got a pee thing going on here. I don't know why. But I'm hoping you remember that. Think about that. This is the truth of the day. When you allow God to transform your pain into your purpose, and I know that's a process that doesn't happen in one church service, doesn't happen in one day. It may take years or months. But when you allow him to transform your pain into your purpose, be better, not bitter, he will point you to your people so that the comfort you've received, you can comfort others. I hope that's your New Year's resolution. Think about this. I was just talking to one of our young interns back there, and he was talking about, I'm trying to figure out what my purpose in the life. And I go, I don't know if you're in the service, because he's over there working. I said, here's what I said today. Your pain points you to your purpose. And he looks at me like, I go, I don't know what your pain is in your life, but I think God wants to use it for your purpose. And he'll point you to people that need what you have because you've been through it. Just open your eyes and watch, and God does that. Think about this. Scott Newport goes to the hospital because he was a parent. We have a ministry here called Celebrate Recovery that meets on Tuesday nights. Guess who started Celebrate Recovery? A former addict. A drug addict who couldn't beat it, who finally beat it. And God met him, and he says, I got to start a recovery program for people who have this same struggle. Divorce recovery was started by a former person that got divorced and said, man, people need to know the journey to go through in divorce recovery. That's another one of our things. Grief share. People have gone through horrible things and we have that ministry here as well. Think about it. It's crazy all different things. How about this one? Vertical Marriage, a book that Ann and I wrote. First 2 chapters are what? About a couple that almost got divorced when my wife said, I've lost my feelings for you. I remember the night she said that to me on our 10-year anniversary. I remember thinking literally myself, nobody will ever hear this story. I was going to cover it. But then I confessed it, embraced it as part of our story, and said, God was using that to point us to make this a gift to other people. Think about this. How crazy is this? How can it be that a kid who grew up in a divorced home with an adulterous dad who left with his girlfriends and alcohol, and his brother dies the same year, a kid from that broken family ends up writing a book about marriage and is on the radio to 1.5 million people a week talking about marriage and family. Ann and I do Family Life Today radio. How does that happen? That is not us. That is God saying, I'm going to take some of the worst things in your life. I'm going to comfort you through it and give you the answer. That's what vertical means. I'm the answer. And then I'm going to send you to people that need what you've found. Go to your people. So I don't know what you're thinking right now, but I'm thinking 2020 could be the best year of your life. You're finally going to realize how God can meet you in your pain, because he will. And if you're in your pain right now, you just need to turn to God and some people to help you and get the comfort that he can give. And then as you go through that, God's going to work in such a way that he's going to transform you to a way that you've now been healed and you're going to heal others. You understand that? And so we're going to sing a song. You know, I was thinking, I didn't even think of this till the very end of the first service, not in my notes. I thought, isn't it interesting that Karen Roner, I just see you now, but you weren't here the first service. It pops in my head. This is how the Holy Spirit works. Like Karen Roner loses her husband, Steve, who was a friend of mine as we coached Cody and her son Kevin in middle school basketball, to a massive heart attack. I was in Crittenton that day with Kit. Cared as he took his last breath. And they were brand new at Kensington. And what's God do? I don't know how many years later it was, Karen, but next thing I know, she's like, I think God wants to use me to help widows that have gone through what I've gone through. And she has this amazing ministry now because she went through something that God met her, and it didn't happen in a day, but over time. And now she goes to bless others. I thought, what a perfect example of what God wants to do in you. I don't know what your struggle is. I don't know what your pain is. But I'll tell you, there is a God that can meet you right there, and he's not just going to transform you, he's going to use you to transform people that need what you've received through him. So I get excited for Kensington Church in 2020. So I'm thinking, wow, we could be a community that goes to the city, goes to our neighborhoods, goes to our workplaces on mission to say, there's light that can come into your darkness. I've experienced it. Can I walk beside you? And they will welcome that because they are longing for someone to see them and walk with them and point them to the waymaker, the miracle worker, the light in the darkness. We're going to sing just the chorus of that song before we walk out of here. But let me pray for you, and I just want to tell you, as we sing this song, here's what I want you to do. It's an intimate moment because we're going vertical. And some of you maybe just need to sit there. Others, sing it out. Sometimes we sing because we believe. Sometimes we sing until we believe, right? And this is a song that says he is a miracle worker. And that doesn't mean the cancer's going to go away. Sometimes the miracle's just knowing the peace of God in the middle of that. Knowing the victory of God in the middle of the pain. But what a great way to start 2020, isn't it? To go to the waymaker, the miracle worker, the one who's the light in our darkness. So please stand. Let me pray for you. We're going to sing, and then when you walk out, I hope you connect. And then I'm going to tell you, some of you shouldn't walk out. Some of you should walk forward. At the end of the song, we have our prayer team up here. That's confession. You just come up and say, would you pray for me? And they'll pray for you and take that to God. Father, I pray that you would meet us, even right now, in the middle of our pain. Comfort us and make us comforters of others as we sing the truth of who you are. Thank you in Jesus' name.
Promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Say it with me. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Yes, you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Yes, you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. Oh, that is who you are. That is who you are.
You know, as you walk out, think of this thought. We said earlier today, never underestimate the pain in the room. And yet a couple years ago, I was sitting right there at a midweek. And by the way, we have midweek this Wednesday. You don't want to miss it. Cody said, tell the crowd he's going to teach on the one thing you have to do this year if you want to grow your faith. So there's a teaser to come back. And I know what it is, really good stuff. So that's what I said. But a couple years ago, I wish it was me that said this, but it wasn't me. I was sitting right there, and Cody said this, my son, at a midweek. He said, you know, we say around here all the time, never underestimate the pain in the room. But he said, but also never underestimate the power of God to transform that pain into something powerful and beautiful. And I thought that's the balance we need. It's both and. Pain is real and it's hard, but at the same time, the power of God is real and beauty comes from ashes. They're both true simultaneously. We think one can't be true with the other. No, they're both true in the same moment. And so that's what we just sang. He is a way maker, even when you don't think so. He is a miracle worker when you're not seeing a miracle. Sometimes the miracle is different than what you're seeing. He definitely is light in the darkness. If you're in darkness, I'm telling you, today we just told you where the light is. His name is Jesus. He's accessible at any second, and he'll meet you right where you are. He won't shame you for your pain. He won't belittle you for feeling that pain. He'll say, I am with you in this pain, and I will transform you out. Let's go on a journey. And again, maybe you need to come forward and pray with somebody. Maybe you just need to go out and say, I need to connect. I've never connected here. How do I do that? Go to the hub, we'll get you connected. Then come back Wednesday night, and it'll be awesome. And then next Sunday, we get the second installment of Sermons from the Seats. God bless you. Have a great week. Hope to see you Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Bye-bye.